How do you deal with haters? Now, if you're doing anything in property, if you're achieving anything in any walk of life, not everyone is going to like what you do. In this episode of Property Answers, we're going to talk a little bit about dealing with hate and situations where you're not universally liked. But of course, I know you guys universally like these videos. Smash that like button, comment down below as well. I'm joined, as always, by John Howard. Today we've come off a building site. John has been doing a bit of painting and decorating for me on a site. That's why you're wearing the t-shirt, isn't it, John?
No, it's not. You know full well it's not. I tell you what happened was, Ranjan rang me up, which is quite rare, and said, have you got a t-shirt? And I said, no. Then I thought, actually, I have got a t-shirt, but I've never worn it. And then we got onto the situation as why haven't you worn it? So this is really how it's all come about.
Yes,
shall I go first or do you want to? We've got two stories.
Do it. I mean, what we're talking about is hate. And, you know, you cannot be liked by everyone if you're looking to achieve something.
Absolutely, you can't.
And we've all got to learn how to deal with this. But people have had t-shirts.
Yeah, printed, yeah. So let me tell you what happened. So I was the director of Cambridge United Football Club for 18 years in total, but 16 years. And we got ourselves into financial difficulty, and we owned our own ground. And one way of clearing our debt was to sell the ground. But of course, once you sell the ground, people think it's going to be redeveloped and it's going to be houses and the football club won't be there anymore and all the rest of it. And we were a professional football club, what would be now League Two, but we got into the playoffs for the Premier League, which was a super achievement. So I was involved in football for 18 years at Cambridge United. After 16 years, we needed to sell the ground, and we did what's called a lease back, which is when a business sells their freehold but retains occupation and signs a long lease. So it was agreed at an extraordinary general meeting that I should buy the ground with my partner for £2 million, rent it back for 50 years to the club for £200,000 a year, and they had the option to purchase it off us if we had another buy. They had 3 months, I think it was, to buy it themselves. That's fine. All agreed, valuation was done by Savills, everything was all above board and so on. Then one of the other directors, 3 weeks later, said, oh, I want to buy the ground back for the fans, and put it all over the newspapers that they'd paid me 2.35 million, so 350,000 profit.
See, hang on, you've done the deal,
and
someone came out of nowhere and said,
yeah, one of the other directors.
Was he going to give it to the fans?
One of the directors absolutely said, I'm going to buy it back for the fans. Well, all hell let loose. The fact was that he had a property developer behind him, so all he was going to do was, it was going to end up with another developer. And to be quite honest with you, we were also trying to protect the club to a point as well, hence the 50-year lease. So they had a load of t-shirts printed with my name on them, and as you can see, it says, we want our ground back, and there's a picture of me, a younger version of me, a younger version of me, and it says Howard out, So every game, they were chanting, 6,000 people, Howard out, we want our ground back, and worse things than that. I had police protection on a regular basis, home and away. They'd phone the house up, how they got my number, I don't know, saying, we hope your wife dies of cancer, this, that, and all sorts of nasty things. And we had 2 coachloads of fans on a Sunday getting headed off by the police to a pub near my home because they were coming to protest. That's how bad it got.
But this wasn't an own goal, was it?
It wasn't an own goal. No, not an own goal at all, because ultimately we sold the ground 5 years later to a subsidiary of Grosvenor Estates for 3.6 million, because they thought they could relocate the club and develop the ground. They never have, and since then the club actually bought it back. So we made
what was the duration?
Good money. Yeah.
What was the duration of time where you had public hatred, people you didn't know?
Absolutely.
You know, that were camping outside of your house and police protection and all of that. I mean, you're tough as old boots, but you got family and all the rest of it. What was that?
Well, like? I suppose for the first 6 months it was a bit grim, you know. But I always, at half time I'd always, sit down my usual place after half time, take the abuse. You know, I didn't shirk it. One or two people were supportive, of course, but on the whole, the rest of them weren't. And even Joan, who used to sit in front of us at from the director's box and always have a chat with me before the game and after the game, even she stood up and said she wanted the ground back. So it was tough going, but I mean, ultimately, they paid the rent, and we sold it on. As I said, it's 5 years later. I'd left the club by then. I resigned by then, but I stayed on for 2 years after I owned the ground to help things through and so on. And then I got to a board meeting one day and I thought, no one's talking to me. I realised, because after I sat down at the board meeting, they said, look, John, we don't want you here anymore. We've asking you to resign. I said, is that unanimous? And they went, yes. So some of the directors that I worked with for 15 years had already left. I said, fine, I'll go then. So I got home early that night for a change. And and so on. So, you have to tough it out sometimes. And I thought I was doing the right thing. We didn't want to sell straight away for a profit, which of course made it even worse, because people thought we'd been greedy, when actually we knew more about it than everyone else did, but you couldn't tell everyone that in the press. So the press and the TV had a field day, Sky were involved and so on, but there we go. These things happen.
Is that ultimately what gets you through? Because you said in there that I knew I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Is that the one thing that gets you through? Or is there more to it?
No, I think so. I think there's I thought it was a good deal, which it turned out to be, obviously, for us. Secondly, I believed it was the right thing to do, not to sell to this other guy, which proved right in more than one way, really. But the interesting thing is, we ended up putting a lot of cash into the deal, because banks hate lending any money to anything to do with football, because because if it goes wrong, they've got all those fans against them. So it's quite hard to fund deals to buy football stadiums and things like that. It's quite hard to do. The banks, you think, will do it. Go, we're not touching that. Well, that's bad news. But I mean, you've had a similar, or not similar, but a challenging situation as well, haven't you?
I've had my fair share of hate, I think. I mean, this was a bit of a classic. I made a mistake, which I've learned from now. I mean, I put in 2 planning applications on the same street to convert large houses into multiple flats.
Yeah.
That met up with, for some reason, a lot of local opposition.
What a surprise.
Well, it's all under the planning rules, it's all fine. But under planning permission, if more than 2 or 3 people object, they have to haul it into committee.
Absolutely.
So they had a petition, and they thought I was going to turn them into, I don't know what they thought I was going to turn them into, but they're very nice flats.
Your normal quality flats, I would imagine.
They're normal quality flats, very sought after, Islington, nice
if he
area
says so himself, yeah.
Very, very sought after. But anyway, the point is they got dragged into committee, and the way committee works is that the proposers of a scheme have 3 minutes to talk, and the opposers of a scheme have 3 minutes to talk. And these guys, the viewing gallery was full in the council chambers. They had brought the local MP to speak on the opposers' side. So in Islington North, the local MP was none other than Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, good old Jeremy.
This was before he became leader of the Labour Party. This was something about 2006-ish time. So he came in to do his 3 minutes talk. And he said about me, his exact words he said about me was, he's a rampant greedy developer who gets what he wants from the planning system by stealth.
He obviously knew you, Ranjan, quite well.
Well, I think, if you rephrase some of it, I mean, greedy is just ambition.
Yeah.
And getting what I want from the planning system is perseverance.
Yep.
And knowing the planning rules. And by stealth is just knowing the sequencing of how to get planning permissions, not in one go, but in bite-sized chunks. So I thought that was quite a compliment, really. But it didn't really, and there was just, it didn't help that I think 1 week before this committee, I was featured in the Mail on Sunday in the money section. So they'd done a picture, I was talking about buy-to-let and leaving your career and doing buy-to-let professionally. And I had this picture of me standing with arms folded in front of a street of houses and all of that. And it was a big article. So they'd come up with this article and said, oh, this is what he does, blah, blah, blah. And my architect and counsel representing me just used that to our advantage, because we were absolutely right about this. The planning committee did not want to go on our side. I mean, the planning officer had recommended it, but the committee is a different ballgame.
Totally, because they don't want to lose votes.
They don't want to lose votes, and they had a lot of protests. They didn't want to make that decision in that committee. So my guy just turned around and said, look, you've seen him in the Daily Mail. He's a big shot guy. He's going to be all over you with his barristers and costs and everything like that. Do you really want this to not go your way? So they found a way to adjourn the meeting so that they didn't have to make the decision in front of all the public. And then they granted the permission 3 days later.
Fantastic.
Which is very, very strange.
Win-win.
They didn't want to do it in front of those people.
No.
But what got to me was, it was people I don't even know.
Yeah,
they know nothing about me. And they're taking the very worst that can happen. I mean, they thought we were going to do, asylum seekers and all of this sort of stuff, but these are not. It's not that sort of area for it. These are nice, yuppie, professional apartments. And that was the last thing on our mind. But they would just superimpose an image that they feel that you represent and hate you for that without knowing anything about you. No. And that was very strange. And this thing that, you're not doing anything wrong. You are right. You're not doing anything against the law. These people are wrong. And that belief gets you through.
I totally agree. I think the belief gets you through. You have some tough days, but there's also a lesson there where sometimes it's best not to embarrass people by putting them on the spot, as the planners, the committee would put on the spot. They'd rather just take a step back and actually sort it out behind the scenes rather than be confronted. And there's something to be taken from that as well sometimes.
Oh, it's a bit quicker. So I just remembered now why they adjourned the meeting. Because somehow it came up that the people were talking, they were talking about the people who were doing some of the works, and they were Polish. And my guy who was doing my 3 minutes referred to them as Poles. And the chair of the committee said that was racist. And adjourned the meeting. So we then, next day, we sent a load of BBC articles where, people from Poland are called Poles.
Yep.
It's in BBC articles, it's in all sorts of, in the press, and that was just a pure fantasy reason.
But they use that as an excuse to then be able to give you the permission afterwards.
And they didn't, exactly. They didn't even refer to that. They just gave the permission.
So really, all a bit like my situation. All's well that ends well. You've done well out of that. We did well out of the stadium, and it's all about having belief and sticking to your guns, and keeping polite and genuine and authentic. I think that's important, because in the end, I think people I like to think, see through the rhetoric and the bullshit, if you like. And I think the message for people here watching this is, when they've got a planning application in, they will have issues. People will object, and you can't take it personally. You need to take it in good spirit, and you need to show some humour if you can, and be humble about it all, because there's no point winding the situation up any further, because it's only going to be to your disadvantage. And I think that's what I've learned out of my, and it happens on other planning things as well, I know, but in my situation with the football club was certainly the fact I stuck at it and remained humble about it all. That was the main message, I think.
I think the wider context now is, of course, if you are in buy-to-let investing, or even a small-time property developer, but particularly buy-to-let, it is now something where the narrative is that it's almost as though there's no such thing as landlords. It's all rogue landlords.
Yes.
You take the worst in the industry, and the narrative is to transpose the worst
And,
of the
and
industry
everybody's
on
and everybody's the same. Yeah.
And it's treating everybody to deal with the worst of the industry.
I agree with you, and I think I'm, as you know, I am political, but I don't. But I'm going to say it anyway. Under Labour, I think this rogue landlord business, landlords, we're going to be knocked even harder by Miss Rayner, who's the housing secretary. You know, it's going to get really, really tough, I believe. Even tougher than Michael Gove was, who was no help to us at all, was he? And I think that's what we've got to remain firm and consistent with our messages.
The problem we've got is that there is the socialists and the Labour folks have an ideological opposition to rent seeking and landlordism.
Greedy, we've already heard it. Greedy landlords
as an activity.
Exactly.
We shouldn't be doing this.
Greedy landlords. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're socialist government at the end of the day.
So that is people that don't know you, and you feel you're doing something right. Yep. You're people that occupy your properties don't feel you're doing anything wrong. No. They're getting a service. They're getting a home. They're getting flexibility.
Yes.
And increasingly these days. The idea that people want to own their own home isn't always true.
No.
Renting gives a lot of flexibility, and I think that's been forgotten about. But that's a bit of a side issue. It's this whole thing of when the government of the day has no respect for your profession and paints a picture that you're all bad, greedy, your motives are unjust, then that does breed hatred.
Of course.
For all of us. So all of us have got to deal with that.
And we're all in the same boat. If you're putting a planning application in, you're going to have objections. And our message really here is that you've got to tough it out. You've got to tough it out. If you want to be popular all the time, don't be a property developer or landlord, to be quite honest with you.
I would widen that out. If you want to be successful at anything.
Yeah, no, probably true. Yeah.
Because if you're successful, you're doing better than average.
Yep.
If you're doing better than average, you're putting your head above the parapet.
Yep.
And when you do that, there are people that want to shoot those heads.
So the message is keep strong, believe in what you're doing.
And go for it. You will have hate. The more successful you are and the better you do, you will experience more people that just don't like the fact that you're doing better.
Thing is, Ranjan, I've come to like you.
It's taken a long time.
It has taken a long time, to be fair, yeah.
And on that bombshell, I think that wraps it up for this episode. We don't hate each other, we like each other. See you guys in the next video. The Baker Street Property Meet is the UK's largest and #1 property investors networking event. The property market is going through monumental change right now, and at Baker Street Property Meet we aim to keep you up to date with the latest tips and tricks and insider tactics to help you keep on top of your property investing game and succeed in these troubled economic times. The Baker Street Property Meet is fundamentally about networking, because it's not what you know, it's who you know. And at Baker Street, we aim to connect you with the people to make your property journey a monumental success. There's no better place to be to further your property investment journey than the Baker Street Property Meet. So make sure you're here, you're connecting with myself and Andrew Roberts, our expert guest speakers, and 300 passionate property people each and every month. See you at the next meet. Get your spot at bakerstreetpropertymeet.com.